It's been a while since I've had time to play a serious team-based competition. Winter Royale was that first competitive experience for me outside of random scrims since Twitchcon 2018, where I placed in the grand finals with Bumpa. Instead of posting highlights or a recap video, let's keep it educational and recap the biggest mistakes that I was able to fix throughout the 3 days to continuously improve and end up placing better and better each day. Contrary to popular belief, it's not really mechanics that hold me back as a player, as mechanics is the one thing I can practice given my schedule. I can crank on the road while casting, and when I'm at home on the computer, it's during the day when there's not really scrims, so it's mostly all creative. It's developing habits and actually applying things from VOD review that I struggle with, since I don't have any huge opportunities to apply things. So this video will cover a lot of stuff that we might have covered in VOD review. In fact, it will. But it will show the direct reasons why those things are good to do, by basically showing the bad way to do it first. Plus, it will help those of you who are interested in how to learn from your own tournament runs. Excuse the microphone here on the road during the holidays. I'm testing out my travel setup and I realized I did not bring a pop filter. This does mean in the future though, I'll have a pretty slick setup to carry with me when I'm traveling for casting and such, which means content on the road. Let's get into it. Our first mistakes were related to early game, as you would guess. aipha and I had never played together, not a single time. So quickly, things did not go that great off spawn. It's important to have a good game plan. We knew that, but given the little amount of time leading into the tournament, there's no real established game plan. This is an easy fix. Pay attention to who's dropping where and what challenges they might face. I noticed that aipha really liked to control the Christmas tree, whereas I tend to like the east side of Misty Meadows. We ended up developing a strat that did not screw aipha if he decided he wanted to control the tree, due to seeing a weapon, seeing an easy pickoff, or whatever reason. I would end up landing at the blue house, grab that chest, and be able to swoop back out if he was getting 50-50 or chased down. Additionally, we decided that the split wasn't the greatest if another team took the side I normally went, since we would end up getting pinched by them and the other team uncontested across the bridge. Biggest takeaway here, figure out your teammates' tendencies and plan for them, but also try to come up with the optimal splits that you like. For us, that ended up being dropping east side together and then either pinching the team or pushing across the bridge to third party, or just completely disengage. Moving on, our mid-game fighting and rotating was actually quite good for the most part. Mostly because day one, we W-keyed a lot, not really understanding that format, but it gave us really good experience fighting. Where we struggled was actually in endgame. We couldn't capitalize and ended up dying somewhere in 6th zone often, with only our mid-game elims earning us points. This is clearly not good enough. The issue was, we didn't have any set roles and responsibilities. I was trying my best to set up aipha, but neither one of us was doing anything well. Neither one of us was picking the best layer. We were just picking okay layers. Neither one of us was tunneling really far ahead. We would just tunnel a bit. Neither one of us was getting good picks. We would just get mediocre damage. It was just both of us doing all of that, but just okay. Late day 2, we decided that I would just feed aipha all of my hard mats, and I would go for picks and he would tunnel. What that led to was not only a good setup, but we both improved significantly at our given roles over the last sessions. I was getting a lot of damage and picks. I realized I was the person who needs to guide the tunnel in terms of communicating who is on our layer, if we need to go up or down, or further in. I realized I was the person who needed to pressure other players on our layer to get aipha space. We ended up being way more material efficient since aipha was constantly getting refreshed with my hard mats and we weren't making any extra useless tunnels. This was the biggest fix on day 2 that started earning us a lot more points per game. This also leads to my next realization/mistake. We found ourselves dying because of chaos coming off of a congested layer. The way that I had started finding a lot of picks and damage was just by looking and editing down in our tunnel, not really looking for shots on the side of our tunnel. Sure, I found picks, if they were there, but what ended up happening is people get right next to us because I wasn't conditioning our layer. Next game I started experimenting with adding more angles to find picks out of the tunnel, and sure enough, I see teams on our layer who start moving towards us, because that's just how the storm pushes people. Immediately it clicked. Even if I'm not going to get this kill, if I pressure him, he might go up or down or stay away in some shape or form. We've definitely seen that be important in VOD review, but I don't think I've ever been able to vocalize why it's so important. I'm calling it layer control. It's not just forcing people off of your layer, but also communicating and knowing who is on your layer. Directly after this realization, I started calling team on your left, up ahead, team directly to your right, team directly above you. to help aipha guide and switch directions if necessary. The tunneler should be working his hardest to know this information, but first and foremost, he's tunneling and doesn't have time to focus on each individual direction while he does it. It's not just about selecting the right layer, but bullying your layer to keep it a good layer. Now, this isn't in any sort of chronological order, but on day 2 after a disappointing finish in NA East, I spent a lot of time watching NA West, and I realized how much better the best duos loadouts were synergized with each other. If someone had an RPG, their partner had an RPG as well, with one of them being gold. If someone had 8 floppers, the other player had 3 Slayerfish and 4 floppers. Like, there was a clear goal with their loadouts. aipha and I never really had any specific goal with our loadouts. With those that I pointed out, double RPG is going to be good at controlling space and taking height in endgame, and then fragging out. Fish loadouts are going to be incredible at ultimate low and playing for placement, making zone plays. Both have a focus. I look back, sometimes we would upgrade our pumps, sometimes one of us would carry a P90, sometimes we'd carry an RPG, and the other guy would be carrying a lot of floppers. There was no synergy and no goal with our loadouts. The next day I just straight up said, hey, let's just go for those 2. Let's go for heavy fish or heavy RPG. And we did that. You'd be surprised at how much you can actually attain those loadouts, especially because at this point our early game was already optimized. This helps so much it's not even funny. We fought for height a lot more, and every game we got extra placement due to fish. Having a synergized loadout helped everything be more consistent. If we had fish, every single time we would end up getting extra placement due to our fish. It wasn't just one person dying early with it, both of us had it, and we ended up clutching up second places and stuff like that. If we had double RPG, we ended up taking height. We ended up doing stuff with our double RPG that was important. Have a goal and game plan every game, starting in early game. It needs to develop based on what you find, what early game conditions you went through, and where the zone is. If the zone is really far, maybe you need to carry something else, but everything needs to have a goal. This is probably the thing that changes the most season to season. Imagine what kind of game plan you can create with Season X loot pool compared to now. On the subject of loadouts, this mistake was a short one. We decided it was better to upgrade RPGs or ARs over shotguns when playing for endgames. We were opting for shotguns a lot on day 1 and early day 2, where it was really good for W King and protecting against W King, but it wasn't super strong at anything tactical. Having a SCAR or RPG, while still super valuable in those situations where you're W King or protecting against the key, they're also way more important than having a purple pump. Remember, there's no reason you want to be getting in a situation or even a range where a 1 pump is necessary. Before that though, you can use your SCAR or RPG to set yourself up to finish fights. And then on top of that, the SCAR in endgame is a brutal finisher. The RPG just makes sense, though we still opted not to upgrade anything if we didn't really have any rockets yet, rather opting to make sure we spent more time looting or finding extra unlooted POIs. I ended up playing EU on day 3 with Turkey Lips, another player I've never played with. We played quite well for our first time playing together, but something I learned with him is that having height isn't good if you don't apply good methods to hold it. Thankfully, in this game, he was able to clutch up and win it out. Essentially what happened was we had double RPGs and used it to take height. We ran out of rockets because we didn't really start with many, and then basically lost height because all we did was super push out our high ground tarp without good connection fundamentals. We were just building over another team and connecting at the front rather than cheaply double layering. Yes, I did get incredible beams on people because I was able to focus solely on beaming, but what we learned from Stompy and Shinken back in World Cup duos, and later on Zayt, Saf, Bizzle in the first Trio Cup, was that you want to split layer and look for different angles and connect to each other in random areas from different heights. It becomes impossible for a team to 1, know how and where to knock you down, 2, do it with any sort of usefulness that won't just get reinforced instantly, and 3, do it without getting beamed from an angle that they actually expected. I was able to apply this obvious and established concept later on with aipha and double layered, and basically dominate from height for an entire game. Our biggest positional mistake all weekend long was late rotating into a spot that was obviously going to be occupied. The lake west of Lazy Lakes that has a few fishing holes was one of our favorite spots to restock up and get back into fighting chances. This didn't happen too often, but sometimes we'd be coming out of zone or rotating through there on our way out of first zone if we were getting storm fought in Misty or outside of Misty. The issue wasn't that we were rotating there at all, but mostly that we were blindly rotating in. We would take our boat and just boost right into 2 people and have to storm fight like psychopaths. And sure, if someone was watching, they would say, oh yeah, it's not your fault, you had no clue they were there. but I decided it's better to push up the hill first, scout it, and then go down, even if time was against us, because it's a simple fix. You just gotta know your common paths and timings. With all these lessons in hand so far, we started taking height a bit, and now that we had worked on our loadout goals and upgrades, and also made improvements positionally, we got height with double RPG. It wasn't just height, it was reinforced height by one of our third zone bases up on a tower. This was a 10+ kill win in the making, easily. What ended up happening was slightly different. We ended up getting second place with like 4 elims only, and most of them were mid-game picks. Why? Well, let's just say we blew our load. Watch my rockets. I'm literally not hitting anything. After the game, we had a discussion and said, yeah, well, all we did was grief the entire server. This is facts. It still worked in our favor since we didn't get pressured for height until a flop of play by Ballatw, and everybody else died netting us placement. This is a lesson I learned a long time ago though, but lack of experience and just playtime caused me to revert on good habits. Fire your rockets in useful locations, not just randomly. We both had 12 rockets here and none of them connected with damage because we were just shooting them randomly. We weren't target firing and synchronizing them, and we weren't shooting into tunnels in open space. We were just randomly griefing. What could have been a pop-off game that pushed us in the top 50 ended up just maintaining us in the top 250. The journey ended with a crazy stack game with aipha on day 3. We rotated out of Misty with decent loot. We didn't fight early game and nobody else did either. We all rotated out one by one and gave each other plenty of room. But pretty quickly, based on that behavior and the amount of off-spawn fighting, we knew Storm Surge was going to be an issue. We both picked up snipers and headed out of Misty. In hindsight, this was already window number 1 to get tags, but we missed it. Instead, we had the good idea to hit the mountain center map and look for tags on people rotating out of first zone for a bit. Good idea, however, it was already occupied and that team wanted it. Holy. Given our experiences throughout the 3 days, we decided we didn't want it. But in hindsight, this would have been a good fight to take with Storm Surge in mind. Disengaging just wasted our time completely and went against our goals. We were able to survive the third zone surge by hitting a clutch snipe right before it activated, but we ultimately died during fifth zone surge. If we had taken this fight, sure, we would have spent resources, but we would have had the possibility of recovery with any kills we got, but most importantly, we would have been 100% above Storm Surge for the rest of the game by trading with that team. It didn't have to go to fight finish, but we would have gotten damage, and that's for sure. The risk being that, of course, we could have just straight up died, but it seems worth it after everything else that happened. That is kind of a summary and also what I learned while playing Winter Royale. Hopefully this helps you guys make your own summaries and biggest lessons learned from your games. I want to start making a lot more content about mistakes and also just my own gameplay in general, whether it be highlights or whatever. I think this idea is a good mix of everything. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, and do all the things on my social media. I'll be back with more content just like this. Peace.